We're going to be talking today a little bit about anxiety and intuition. Recently, what got me thinking about anxiety versus intuition, I was having a conversation with my husband, as I often do, and he looks at me and he goes like, I was having a hard day. I was having a really hard day, and he looked at me and he was like, babe, when's the last time you just had fun? And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he was like, when's the last time that you had fun? Not with me or anybody else, just like by yourself, not doing something productive, just having fun. And I was like, I don't, like, people do that? Is that a thing that people do? Because I was like, is that a thing that people do? Because I don't do that. Guess I haven't done that. And I didn't realize that for a long time I stopped having fun, and I was only doing things that I felt were productive. I was only doing things that I thought led to some sort of destination. And so I realized that I needed to figure out why, because fun is very important in life and I wasn't having any. And I talked about it in therapy with my counselor, and I realized that I was avoiding the things that I enjoyed the most because I was anxious about them, because I wanted to do them perfectly. Like, I hadn't done anything with music, listening to music, singing in a really long time, and it was because every time I did something music related, I felt like it had to be perfect. Or I hadn't done anything with YouTube for a really long time because I felt like anytime I did anything with YouTube, it had to be perfect. And so I was challenged to just do something. Just do something that makes you anxious and see how it goes from there. So I've been kind of on my own little journey, I guess, with just learning about anxiety and how to overcome it. And I wanted to share with y'all some of the things that I've been learning thus far. So before we dive in deeper and talk about anxiety and how to overcome it, I wanted to dive more into what anxiety actually is, because I think it's a word that we use often, but may or may not know what it actually means and where it comes from. So anxiety it's a feeling of worry and nervousness, and it's usually linked to the future. It's a nervousness about something that we're uncertain about, an outcome that we're uncertain about, something that happens in the future. And there's no immediate threat, but if you're like me, you want to know about everything. You want to have all the information so that you can then go and make the best decision possible. And how do I make the best decision possible if I don't know what's going to happen in the future? And so that's always been my issue, is there's no way to know about the future, but I want to know about the future to make sure that I make the best decision possible. And that just is not how it works, unfortunately. But that's what anxiety is. It doesn't have to do with I'm in danger right now. That's usually like a fear response. It's something that's causing you no immediate threat. So there's, can cause persistent worry, racing thoughts. You have trouble concentrating. Anytime I'm anxious, I have a really hard time just like focusing in on and doing work. Obviously, you might feel a lot of fear. Sometimes you might have stomach issues. Like, there's all kinds of things that anxiety affects. If you're a procrastinator, that usually originates from anxiety. Triggers can be anything from stress at work. It could be health concerns, really big life changes. But as I found out, triggers can also just be like, I want this thing to be perfect. I think a lot of anxiety is triggered by perfectionism. At least for me, it's triggered by perfectionism and wanting to be good enough and not feeling good enough. And then freaking out about not feeling good enough, not because that's based in any type of fact, but because there's just so much fear about what if I'm not good enough. Triggers can be stress at work, personal relationships, health concerns, major life changes. If there's other things maybe that I haven't listed that tend to cause you anxiety, it'd be interesting just for you to think about what causes me anxiety. Something that's weird for me that causes me anxiety is having a scheduled meeting. If there's a meeting on my schedule, I get so much anxiety about whether or not I'm going to make it to the meeting on time. And one of the ways that I have alleviated this anxiety a little bit is just by setting a timer. So we talked a little bit about anxiety, but what is the opposite of that? What is not necessarily the opposite of that, but what is intuition, right? Because anxiety is when a fear of the future is leading us. What is different when we allow our intuition to lead us? When we are being led not by fear, but by intuition. So what is intuition? It's the ability to understand or know something immediately. So intuition is not necessarily logical. In fact, it's usually not logical. You can't usually explain why you're having these feelings about something. You just know. It's just that knowing, like it's a gut feeling. You're just like, this is the path that I need to take, or I need to stay away from that place, or I don't know why, but I don't like this person, or I don't know why, but I'm obsessed with this person. Like those are just split reactions. And even though we can't usually logically explain them, we usually have these feelings of intuition because our subconscious has picked up on a lot of different signals and cues, and our subconscious brain works faster than our conscious brain does. So recognizing intuition is a little bit harder because intuition is a lot quieter than anxiety, which we'll talk more about later. But intuition often comes as a sudden understanding or knowledge that something feels right. So what you'll want to look for that is like a thought or an idea that pops into your mind out of nowhere, just like, yeah. Intuition is usually a calm and clear feeling. So whereas anxiety, if you're being led by anxiety, you're usually feeling like things have to happen right now, really, really anxious, I don't know what to do, and you're probably heightened. Intuition is more of a calm voice. It's more of a soft voice. It's more of a pleasant or neutral voice, and it's not going to make you freak out. It's going to give you some level of clarity. And one thing that I do want to say is clarity does not mean that there's no fear attached. So you can be clear that you're meant to do something, or clear that there's a specific path that you're meant to take, and still have fear around taking that path. But that's just because you've then started to overthink about what you have felt. You're then starting to overthink about that intuitive download that you've gotten. So that's the difference. There's just the immediate knowing, and then there's the overthinking part. Intuition also is more consistent and doesn't waver over time. So even after you've had time to reflect on something, if there's a feeling or thought that remains, or a passion that is just persistent, that's how you know that it is your intuition, that it's not just something that was from anxiety, or not something that maybe was just like a hope or a whim, but an actual deep intuitive feeling. And intuition, again, it's not filled with fear. You're not going to have a fearful feeling when you have an intuitive thought. You're going to feel peace and clarity. Now, you might start overthinking later on, but that's a different thing. That's when your anxiety starts kicking in. So how is fear and intuition different? So intuition is, again, it's subconscious, and essentially your brain is recognizing patterns really, really fast, and your conscious brain can't even pick up on it as fast as it's processing. Whereas anxiety is from either conscious or subconscious fears. So it can be fears of things that you've experienced in the past. And so that has then informed your present. And so you're anxious about it. And a lot of times that's unconscious, because that's just your past experiences. And you don't even always know that those experiences are being brought into the now. And then another difference that we've talked about is just how they are and how they sound emotionally. Intuition is going to have a positive or neutral tone, and anxiety is going to be more like fear, worry, dread. It's really, really intense and overwhelming, and it impacts your ability to think clearly. Decision making, intuition can usually lead to quick, confident decisions, especially when you trust your intuition, whereas anxiety is going to have you overthinking and you're, like playing around with things in your mind over and over again. Is this the right decision? Is that the right decision? I don't know what to do. Do I do this? Do I do that? Do I not? Intuition provides literally leads to decisions that are going to they're going to align with your values and your long-term goals. And anxiety can lead to decisions that are kind of short-sighted, and maybe you are just fearful of something, so you try to hurry up and do something right now, and you maybe missed another opportunity and have some regret over the decision that you made. Practical steps to recognize intuition. So how can you actually get to the point where you're able to hear the quiet voice that is intuition? Because again, where anxiety is really, really loud and overpowering, intuition is usually a more quiet, stable, calm, loving voice. So if you think about being in a room full of people, it's usually the loud one that you're going to hear. The loudest one is not necessarily the right one or the one that you want to follow. Whereas, that quiet voice, I know we all have those friends that are really quiet, but when they say something, it's profound and people listen. That's your intuition. So things that will help you be able to hear your intuition: mindfulness, practicing mindfulness, or meditation. Meditation does not have to be you just sitting in a room, silent, by yourself. Meditation is anything that brings you into the present moment. It takes your brain out of the past, it takes your brain out of the future, and it brings it to the present moment. So, ways that I bring myself back to the present moment are with physical activity. So walking is a big one for me because it gets me out. It literally gets me out of my head and into my body because I'm moving. Sometimes I will clean. You can journal. You can work on something that requires you working with your hands, like making arts and crafts, making some type of jewelry, drawing, coloring, just something that gets you focused on the present moment. Something else I like to do, I'll sit out in nature and just try to pick out how many sounds can I hear, how many different birds. Oh, a car just went down that street. Oh, I hear this like bug making a sound over here. The wind is blowing. I'll just maybe close my eyes and try to listen for as many sounds as possible, because that's bringing me to this present moment as opposed to having me, all over the place. And another thing is to just have fun. Like, what do you enjoy doing? And sometimes this is a hard question to answer. One thing that I thought about, and something that you can ask yourself, is what did you enjoy doing as a kid? That's usually a great place to start. When I was in a time in my life when I really, really wasn't having any fun, which was even worse than, I guess, this more recent time when I wasn't having any fun, I started asking myself, what did you enjoy doing as a kid? And I went back and I read all my favorite childhood books. I started with Harry Potter. I feel like I was so deprived at the time that I read the Harry Potter books the first time, but I really wanted to listen to the audiobooks because I had always heard that they were really good. And so I started listening to the first audiobook. Y'all, I almost cried. I got teary-eyed, just like, this is amazing. I can't believe I'm listening to this audiobook. It's so it was just such a magical experience for me. And I just feel like it took me back to my childlike self. And something else that I did, I've tried skating or drawing or doing arts and crafts. I would make a meal just for myself. I noticed that I always would cook for other people. Back then, I was always cooking for other people. I would not really put time and effort into cooking for myself. I would just throw some stuff in a pan and saute it up and cook for myself. So something else that grounds me and centers me is if I am cooking, not because I have to, but because I want to. and I take my time and I put some music on and I have a good time with it. So I think those are some really great ways to kind of switch your mind from a place of being anxious. Once you notice that you're feeling anxious, once you start recognizing what anxiousness feels like in your body, and can kind of like, okay, I'm feeling anxious and I'm now going to like put my plan into place. Like I have a kind of an anxiety plan. Like what do I do if I'm feeling anxious? Usually the first thing is that I go on a walk. Like, have I drunk some water? Let me take a sip of water. So get your anxiety plan in place.